Thank you. So when I came here, I was sort of expecting that this would be about gravitational waves or electromagnetic counterparts from gravitational waves, compact binary mergers with about 10 events per year. That might have been a bit with 10 squared degrees, and I don't know if that's the right rate. But the kind of things that we are probably interested in is the kilonova emission, and I didn't know about the broadband emission till today. So I'll discuss LSST cadence in general, but I'll keep this in mind. So the outline that I have is about LSST and its component, and I'll talk a bit about OPSIM and the OPSIM outputs. I'll talk a bit about the metric analysis framework that Tony mentioned, and some of the characteristics on the detailed components. There have been discussions on how to improve this for transients, and I'll bring that up. Okay, so the cadence in LSST is determined by a set of key science cases. That's mostly cosmic probes, recleansing, BAO, large-scale structure, and then supernovae, and then transients, and then largely solar system, mostly asteroids. And that determines all of the desirable characteristics of the data. And when combined with the system of LSST, the hardware and the data processing, that limits the range of possibilities for cadence. So these are the components of LSST. There are about 2.5 million visits. Each visit is that pointing, covers about 10 squared degrees. Each one is in a particular filter. It's UGRIZY. There are different regions of the sky that this covers. The blue part is the white phase deep. This is what we mostly talk about, where the median revisit time in some filter is about 3 days. The deep drilling field has much higher cadence. Those are these little dots, but they are really small spatial areas, so each of them is about 10 square degrees. This is the south celestial pole, the galactic plane, and the northern ecliptic spur. Those are special. So if we want to ask how these visits are going to be scheduled, there's a scheduler optimizing on weather, observing conditions, and a plan strategy. We can see versions of this cadence now using the operations simulator. And this is what operations simulator tries to do. These points are the centers of different fields. And what the operations simulator does is based on the strategy and the observing conditions, it decides which of these points it should visit. And that's done by using a set of static constraints provided by science cases in each proposal. And it really tries to optimize efficiency, which is right now, which is essentially minimize the amount of time spent swimming. So if we look at the cadences that are there, there's historical data on seeing clouds, etc. There's a sky model which has been built in LSST, which determines the sky brightness at the LSST site in any direction, including the impact of the moon and the sun during twilight. And there are dithers added to each of these pointings as an afterburner effect right now to get the LSST sky. So this is a animation that I wanted to show. Um, since this is a PDF, it's not going to work, but there's a very similar animation on YouTube, so that's what I'm going to try to do.
Move right. So extend the screen to the right.
And so you can see the different colors. So this is red, which is I think white, and you can see how it moves around. This is the ecliptic, and this circle that you're seeing is the air mass of 1.4, and this black dot is the moon. So you can sort of see that it tries to avoid the moon, and then whenever you see a single color, that's a single colored filter moving around making observations. Right? So the green one I think is G. And then it changes and goes on.
Which black dot is the moon?
I think it's this one.
The
So
isn't that supposed to be Zenith?
No, it's moving.
Is it?
it's a bit
Oh, maybe it's not moving.
it's a bit hard to see. So there's a
There was a
zenith
black dot,
pointing
yeah.
across,
Yeah, there's a black
Oh,
dot.
is it?
and then there's a black dot.
Yeah, it's there. It's moving left.
It's over on the side.
I think that's the sun. Oh,
Well,
there's a sun.
No, I think the thing that's staying in the center is the zenith.
Right.
The moon is over. It's almost over on the side. It's crossing around. The moon's.
Oh, yeah.
This is the moon, and it's
Yeah.
new moon, I think,
Yeah.
which is why
See,
it's
both
light.
is,
I think that's
And right now it's new moon, but then
Oh.
there'll be a case where you might be able to see the moon in the middle, and you'll see that all of the observations stay away from the moon because of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's roughly how the filter changing works.
It's mesmerizing.
Is- Thank you. So when the OPSIM is run, you get an output which is a simulated set of observations over the entire 10-year history, which takes into account kind of downtime, all of the weather conditions that were simulated, and all of the proposals that were simulated. And these are all available online. There are a set of benchmark cadences that have been released, which you can download from here. The current baseline, which is the latest, is this Minion 1016 SQLite. The format of this is that it's a SQLite database with a number of tables. The two most important ones are the proposal, which is essentially a dictionary of an integer called proposal ID, to the proposal that it is, and then the summary, which is all of the simulated observations that you care about, where each row is a pointer. So it has a set of basic and derived parameters, and it sort of looks like this. This is the index that characterizes a pointing. Prop ID tells you which proposal it is. In this case, this 56 just tells you that it is a deep drilling pointing. The field ID tells you which of those OPSIM fields it's pointing at. You also get RA and DEC, which filter was used, the time, and then there are a bunch of other parameters. The most important ones are probably the sky brightness in that filter and the 5 sigma depth of that observation. So you can go and find the complete description of all the columns on this table. So a common problem in understanding this is if you are trying to evaluate whether this is good or bad for the kind of science you want to do, maybe you want a combination of quantities that are already in that OPSIM table. or you want to use properties of the object because signal to noise matters. And you might want to account for things like the overlap between the fields that are there, because each of those opsim fields overlap and then there are dithers. So the answer to this kind of a problem is to use math, which is one of the things that Tony was pointing out. It's great for quick statistical evaluations. And if you want to define a heuristic quantity that will talk about how well a particular cadence performs for your sciences. It's been extremely useful in validating opsim. It's showed us where some of the things were happening that we didn't like and enabled people to go back and try to correct that. And so I'll go over some of the different components and talk about what math, some of the math results show on this. So the one that we mostly talk about is the wide fast deep or universal cadence. This is this large swath of the blue area that I'm showing. It's about 18,000 square degrees. Each patch of sky gets about 800 to 900 visits over 10 years. And it's distributed in different bands. I think there was a question about how that's distributed. This is sort of the benchmark distribution that is aimed for. It's all statistical, so it doesn't exactly follow that, but that's roughly the distribution that we aim for. So this is U. U has very few observations. G is a bit better. R and I have the most, but Z and Y also have a pretty large number of observations. And this is designed to give you the sort of co-added depth that's advertised. The other important thing here is the co-added depth must be uniform. So the powers, this is not the co-added depth, but the co-added depth must be uniform. That's another major constraint. So that when we do things like BAO, galaxies are found at a uniform depth. So the two things that I thought would be useful for this particular group are the single visit depths, and the new sky is essentially because the sky model has been recently changed. So you can look at what the single visit depth is as a function of the position of the sky.
Sorry, could you read those, just the rough color range?
Yeah, so this is 23. This is actually, it's really hard to read, but maybe this helps you a lot. I was just going to histogram them up. Right, so these are median 5 sigma depths in different bands. So that should give you an idea. And the other one that I think is really useful for transient studies is the median revisit gap. And you can see what this is for the wide fast deep. And you can see basically that when you break it up by filters, this median is very high compared to the time scales that you might be interested in. There are these deep drilling fields that we mentioned. This has a much better cadence, much better co-added depth. And so this is a nice way to just see the median internight gap. It's the same figure that I showed you before, but you can see that all of these are maybe, the green is about 14, the white is about 26, and the deep drilling fields are these points which are somewhere out here around 2. But it's only a few tens of square degrees. So if you are looking for rare events, that's not great. So these things don't react to gravitational, to external discoveries of any kind. And so if we have a large number of events, they can statistically cover something. But if the expected number of events is low, this is probably not a great way to go. It might be possible to detect the broadband emission that we were talking about, because that's a fair number of days. But I guess if you want to actually detect the kilonova emission, special surveys are the way to go. These are a few which address compelling science cases in a small amount of time. And there are a couple of examples in the observing strategy white paper. This might be another one. I just wanted to add a couple of slides on the various tools that we talked about and where they can be found. And then there is a list of resources on Cadence that you can go and download. Okay. All right, thank you.
Brian?
Yes.
So we've mostly been talking about neutron star black hole mergers and things. And the other thing that would be great, I'd like to say something about our local supernova. And for this purpose, I mean, we're talking about nearby galaxies. So are there any thoughts about, you mentioned, or I think it was mentioned earlier, Tony mentioned earlier, SMC, LMC wanting to be covered. Are there any discussions of doing surveys of local galaxies to try to get the early rise of, say, local supernova, or things that we might want to know very well when the explosion happens to look at gravitational wave time coincidence? I guess I'm wondering, what are the thoughts?
Yeah, I don't exactly know the details with young supernova measurements. Maybe Tony can.
Well, I'm just asking the more general question: is there any plans to do like sort of local galaxy surveys, like where you do higher cadence on galaxies that cover an appreciable fraction of the field?
No.
No. Okay. That's just because
If you want, you can submit a proposal to do a deep drilling field on one particular galaxy.
Okay. But they're just sort of
It wouldn't fare well.
Because of field of view, you mean? I mean, it's, you would just should use some other
Yeah, you
facility.
can use a different facility to do that.
okay. Because the field of view is it's too big. It's too big.
Yeah.
It's a waste. Okay. There aren't enough galaxies with that any given size.
So we aren't biased to redshift. We do everything in this column out to redshift about 3 for each individual story.
But are there plans to do that on SMC?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the 1%ers that's been suggested and adopted. We can sit on the SMC, or the LMC, method exposure. But then there's a controversial proposal to cover low latitude portions of our own galaxy, but there's billions of stars and try to do the same thing. And good luck with that documentary. That's a little challenge.
But you also mentioned that in terms of the micro lensing. So is that just part of our own galaxy then?
Yeah.
I think that would just be like.
So some black hole would pass between us and the
Yeah,
star.
but that's not a survey of the whole galaxy. That's just like some field.
Yeah. Well,
I
there
mean-
are various proposals. As you saw, the default is to cover less sampling the entire galaxy.
So I saw there was an Instagram of the intranight time but for a given color. Because these ones are just for any color, right?
So these are all for each color, right? Because this is U, G, R, I, Z, Y. But they're not intranight. These are median revisit gaps. You can also get the intranight if you want. I think Tony showed a plot of that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Rahul.
Yeah.